All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 9 Town of Pitkin work session. It is right at 6:30, almost exactly. And we will open this meeting with the pledge allegiance to the flag, as I like to do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So we have all of our trustees in attendance tonight. We have Ed Pianalto and Jared Garrettson, myself, Tom Gibb, and Ramon Reed, and our town clerk is here, and we have several guests. So our agenda is regarding council discussion regarding Town of Pitkin commissioners. And Sarah has listed out here some of the things I think she probably picked up from our last board meeting, which was expectations regarding communication with town board, and then and what those look like, and confirmation from the town board of planned projects and work, and then expectations for hiring and spending. One of the things that came up, and Ed was interested, so am I. Pete Olson has been working on a draft for our spending policies, among other things, perhaps. And I think that he has got that draft prepared, but it has not gone out to anyone at this time.
Yes, that's correct. So Pete has emailed me a draft, and I just need to email the individuals who were interested in looking at that draft and setting up a meeting date. It'll probably be an online meeting because it didn't happen while Pete was still in town, unfortunately, to review that and get it ready to present to the board.
Okay, so we would like to see that draft. We would like to have a work session on it, and then.
Not necessarily. So the committee that was going to work on it.
Committee that was going to work.
And then we'll present it to the board of trustees.
Excellent. Okay.
And then it's the board of trustees can.
So
Ed from there.
Ed had wanted to be in on that, and I think if I can make it, I would like to.
Me too. Yes, please.
More than three.
Yeah, no, I think we have more than two, we're in trouble. If we have a third, we're in trouble.
We have two. But if we have a third.
So initially, yeah, so it'll just be a work session then. If that's what the board wants, then that's what we'll do.
Fine.
Okay, is that suitable? We just call it a work session? Yeah. And everybody can be here on it. So we have multiple commissioners. I don't know that I have my papers all in order here. Let me get my glasses out. And as times progress and things become more and more, I don't know what word to use here, but these are the commissioners that we currently have. And this was ordinance number 7/2024. Did we pass this?
Yes, it passed. It's not in force yet until the 30 days after publication.
Did we pass it with an addendum or two?
No, it was just updated. It was
Updated
updates. Yeah, and at the last meeting, the board approved it, and so it was put in the Gunnison County Times, and so 30 days after publication, if nobody protests, then it becomes adopted.
Okay, so the following commissioner positions are the environmental health agent, the ditch commissioner, the streets commissioner, the parks and rec commissioner, and the town hall commissioner.
Oh,
Go ahead, Jared.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been so out of it for a while and still am kind of. But remind me, do we have a cemetery commissioner or is that, I know Mark reports, we have a liaison and James Sharpton was until he decided not to. We are a board. I'm president of that board, but I couldn't remember. So that's just the liaison we have. We don't really have what we consider a cemetery commissioner then. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So in our, ordinance that we approved that will be going into force, we had several things that probably have, to some degree, more or less, with various ones, kind of slipped by the wayside. And so, clarification for commissioners. So I have seen commissioners who know how this is done. So I'll just give an example. So at one of our meetings, Mr. Garrettson, who was in our street commissioner, came and he informed us that he had found a really good deal on culverts and that it was his opinion that we should take advantage of that. And there was discussion and the board said, yes, we think that that's a good idea. And so Jesse was directed to go ahead and take care of that. So, and this has been a thing that Jesse's brought up from time to time. So there's communication and then there's clarification or confirmation of the communication that happens. And then everybody knows what the expectations are. And that's how it's supposed to flow. And then Mr. Reed here, who is our town hall commissioner, he presented what he would like to pursue. He has a large vision, but you have to take these things a piece at a time. And so he was given permission to pursue a small piece. And what's that? A beginning. A beginning, yes, a small piece, and then we will go from there. So that's how this is supposed to work. I know we called a work session, and I'm going to be ready for anybody that wants to jump in here. Pete very graciously volunteered, and we don't have that yet for one or two of our trustees, or as you said here, we'll just have a work session on it. And so it's my opinion, until we pull that together, that we would not be out of step with waiting for that to come in and become part of this process before we continue on or do anything. Any thoughts?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, I want to say, I'm not, we've had volunteers for so many years, and I'm not sure exactly when the volunteer commissioner thing came in effect. But can you imagine through these many wonderful years of volunteerism. I can't even imagine how you would put a price tag on the volunteers, what they have done for us through all of these many years. It's wonderful. And I think for sure when we get busy on this, and I didn't see any major thing wrong here at all, that we remember we're standing on the shoulders of those who volunteered before us and how thankful we are. And I think we want to continue along that vein to be positive and thankful. I can't even imagine. And maybe our town has to, I've had some people say, our town is at the point we just have to grow up. And I even think Ramon, maybe it was Ramon, mentioned here a few months ago that we might have to look at, instead of volunteers, they're going to be paid something. I don't know, because we have a hard time finding people. And I don't know if that'll help. Maybe. But it's getting harder and harder to find volunteers, and even harder to find younger volunteers because they're busy raising families and working. But I did think that I was looking at the page here under environmental health and how thankful we are for our environmental health person, that we need to work with the volunteers when they make requests for something that would lighten their load a little or something along those lines. But when I was looking, is it time to get a little specific or not?
Just get as specific as you like. There.
Okay. I really think we need to lighten the load when we can for people and for our wonderful volunteers and when they request something. And then when I looked at number 3 under environmental health, it says work in conjunction with the town sanitarian on relatable issues. And of course, our EHA is under the authority of the Public Health Agency, which is us. But remind me, I don't want to add. Don't take me wrong. I don't want to add anything to someone's workload at all. But is that a legal thing, or do we really need a town sanitarian and an EHA? Or I'm just wondering, when I read that today, I thought, I don't know. But now don't take me wrong. I do not want to add to a workload. So if it would involve that, I don't know. That's my question. Thanks.
Yes, so I do not know the answer to the question, does the town need a designated town sanitarian? I don't know the answer.
And that may be a rabbit trail that we don't need to go down, but just reading that this afternoon, that thought popped into my head. But so one of my statements that I just have said twice is let's lend an ear, hopefully a listening ear, and do what we can to our volunteers who work so hard. If and when they request a lighter load. And like I've said many times before, we don't have 20 and 30. We don't even have 2 or 3 people standing in line for these jobs. So let's do what we can to help.
Thank you, Jared. I'm looking 2 ways here.
I'll kind of respond to some of that. First of all, on the sanitarian aspect, it's been several years now since we've had a town sanitarian. And, from what I've seen, basically the environmental health agent has taken over both jobs. And that was, I think, anticipated or seemed to be when I think it was the 2018 modification of the OWPS ordinance, which expanded the duties of the health agent. And So that's what's allowed her or him, but it's been her, allowed that person to assume what the sanitarian, when we had one, used to do. So.
Don't we still have a town, isn't Rand Mikowski he is no longer.
Ma'am. I think at the same time, as I recall, the same time he resigned as building inspector, he resigned as sanitarian.
Okay, oh, well, no
So
wonder.
That's been, how many years, Tom? Because we've been building inspectors.
Several.
But, okay, so that was kind of like, there was actually a bit of transition, so I can't give you the exact year because Rand was snowbirding. So I was just taking care of his winter jobs.
Mhm.
And then he announced he was done and I don't remember when that was.
Anyhow, I agree with you about the volunteers. I think the primary reason that Pitkin at this time still exists as an incorporated town is due to volunteers. Otherwise, we wouldn't be a town. We wouldn't have the money to hire the staff that other municipalities have. And, it's the number of volunteers, unfortunately, has dwindled, that, we kept going. So, I'm thankful for the people who do volunteer, and, I don't see any reason to try to change that at this point. And just to correct you, Jared, it wasn't me who suggested paying the commissioners ever.
Oh, okay. I'm misremembered. And I'm not saying I'm for that. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it. I so far don't think we've had a time when, I don't know if that kept people from volunteering or not, because it wasn't a paid position. But as far as I recollect or have ever felt, people only volunteer for the love of the town. I can't think of a time when anybody volunteered to do something for other reasons, but anyway, we're thankful for the volunteers.
Tom, if I may, I'll just pipe in here on I guess on the topic of the volunteers. I'm absolutely grateful for the volunteers that we currently have. I still question if we're going to reach a point that we have to throw some kind of a carrot out there to get more people to fill some of these positions. We still have a zoning board position open. I know Gayla has given the letter for April 1st, the EHA position to be open. We have a ditch commissioner and street commissioner open. And for any one of those positions right now, I only know of one person that's volunteered for it. So
Yeah.
I'm absolutely grateful for the volunteers. But I question at some point we've got to look at throwing some carrots out there. It won't be a paid full-time position. We know that, but we may have to do something like that eventually. So I'll switch off that topic since you kind of opened it up. When I look at the three items that are actually on the agenda, and I know you said you wanted to wait until we get the draft of the spending for Pete, which I agree with. But I do, when I look at that first bullet point, expectations for communication to the town board, I think we defined that in the ordinance that we just updated.
Yes, I think we did.
Because all of the commissioner positions under communication requirements say the same thing. Provide a report to the Board of Trustees at each regular meeting on including a budget update, which will include planned expenses in the next month, total funds spent in the previous month, and the estimate to complete project.
it seems to me to be a very concise and good plan.
I think that defines it. And then the second bullet point is confirmation from the town board of plan projects work out. And I'm not exactly what you mean by that bullet point. But I see that tying into the communication part.
Well, yeah, it would be kind of like Ramon saying, here's what I would like to do. But this is the steps that it takes to get started. And so I would like to start, but this is not a whole package.
Sure.
And so, you know, we're baby stepping there.
Okay.
Okay. So I think to a large degree, we're in agreement. We need to take a look at what Pete's got going. It may be that we need to just put a hold on a moratorium regarding, hiring and spending until we get that worked out, which should be pretty quick. So the elephant in the room is me. No, not me. But I was not willing to engage in a conversation with Jesse Garrettson via Zoom because our Zoom connections can go bad in a heartbeat. And I wanted Jesse here. So as I pointed out, you know, Jesse knows how this works. And my example there with the culverts, that was a good deal. And then by way of communication, and this didn't happen as far as I know, is we wound up with culverts down on 7th and State and a big pile of gravel in the road. And that just showed up, I guess. So that was no communication, no clarification, and wasn't on my expectation radar, and it might have been on Jesse's.
Can we go item by item then?
No, I'm just going to use a couple examples. Because, and so then as Jared pointed out via Zoom last meeting, Jesse had sent a couple of bills to the town, and I got them Friday afternoon. I didn't know what to do with them. They're from what, like January of 2022 or 23. Anyway, and this was for work done up on the Candy Memorial gazebo site. And as I recall, that bill, I will call it, came to the Board of Trustees while Eddie Balch was mayor. And that kind of got shot down because that wasn't part of the agreement or the planning or the presentation of any bids or billing or planning or whatever. And so here's what it looks like. It looks like that we've got a bill from Jesse for work that he did up there that the Candy Nassau Memorial Committee or Board did not hire him to do, and the town did not hire him to do. And as I recall, when that came up, Jared said, well, they'll be meeting in the spring and we'll represent that to that board. And in the event that they're not agreeable with that bill, maybe I can just talk Jesse into letting that be part of a donation to the project. And that's the last we heard of it until I got that Friday just before the meeting. And I didn't know what to do with it. It's too old. It's out of date. It's not been kept up with. Several of the things included on that are not been kept up to date and up to speed and so forth. And in your letter there, you said, well, I apologize that I haven't kept my tractor hours up to date since quite a while back. So I don't know what to do with that kind of stuff. You know, typically bills come in as you do them. Typically bills come in for work that you're hired for and so forth. So I was stymied. what am I supposed to do with this? It's been around and now it's coming around again on the gazebo work up there on 9th Street. And then this raised a question in my mind as well. Now, you called me up and said, I don't know, who was it, Sparky or Mitch or somebody came by and said, you got to get those planter boxes with your speed limit signs. They're in the way of plowing. And I said, okay, well, we'll get that taken care of. And they got scooted out of the way. And so, you know, as Jer pointed out, that's kind of like volunteer help. But in the course of after you resigned on January, February, March, was that May, I believe? May of that year. And since then, you have on occasion seen a need and gone out and taken care of a ditch problem here or there, and then submitted a bill. And those are, yeah. So I don't know what to do with those. So the problem here is, as I pointed out, I believe I pointed out without getting real specific, is that sometimes you get ahead of the game and a little outside of the box as far as communication and clarification of what you're going to do and expectations. And you run after your expectations without the communication aspect. So that was one of the things that I wanted to clarify with you. This new ordinance that we've gotten for our commissioners pretty much lays it out pretty solid and hard. This is the process. This is how it's done. And so I wanted you here in person. For that, I didn't want to throw that out in the world via Zoom. I like you a bunch, and I'm not interested in having our Zoom go into technical difficulty in the middle of this conversation and my concerns. So that's what I have to say about that. I don't know where this will go. I am not opposed at all to you jumping into both of these roles, which I see as taking on yourself a bit of hardship. Ditches are tough and streets are tough. But my point is that you have to some degree periodically been outside of the parameters that you should have been working in. And so this is an effort to hold not just you, but all of our other commissioners to a standard of staying within your budget. And if you get problems that are going to, you know, you see them ahead coming up, you get in here and you say, well, we need this, we got that, we've got an opportunity for this, we've got an opportunity for culverts, whatever it is. Communication is hugely important. That's my speech for the night. Yes.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Linda Cole. So I agree. I think the communication expectations that are laid out in the documentation are fantastic, right? Tell us what you did last month, tell us what you're gonna do next month, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I gotta say, I personally have been here in Jesse's presence when an emergency comes up. And so I don't think you're addressing how those happen. So when the street's flooding because a ditch is stopped up or what have you, and he jumps in because he's awesome, like, or what if it costs money to fix it or what have you? I'm just saying, I think that there's some commissioner positions that need something else to handle these one-off quote unquote emergencies. Because I don't think anyone expects Jesse or anyone else to try to get a hold of whoever the appropriate people are in an emergency. It depends. I don't know. We need guardrails. Right? I mean, what are you supposed to do? What do you expect anyone in that position to do? This isn't a Jesse issue. This is a street commissioner, ditch, whatever. Sorry, whatever it is we're talking about.
Thank you.
They're supposed to do.
You want to hear from me or not?
Jesse, you may step right up and speak.
Testing.
Yep.
Communications is the italicized capital letter word. And I must start with your first statement about the culverts on 7th Street and State. Sarah has a copy. Eddie Bulge worked with me on that. And in 23, I believe, the Morrises asked for a culvert in there, and Sarah told them without coming to the council or to the street commissioner that there was not in the budget for that year. And so they came to me, I was still street commissioner, and they offered to supply those culverts so they can get in and out of their front yard parking lot. That's actually State Street. When I resigned, mayor, whenever that was, I was raked over the coals for doing what Rachel and Eddie both had put me in charge of doing. And that is maintain the streets from the road grading to the graveling to the mag chloride, basically those three big items. And so I continued doing those things. And in probably March, Sarah gets a hold of me. And I don't know if she's our city manager or what her title is. And I don't know if she was Mayor Eddie Bolch's designee. But it was not communicated to me as to where this thing started festering. And when she approached me as to what was my, can't say the word, and I said, the seat of my pants. And she didn't care for that answer. I said, well, we don't have a regimented every 5 years we put gravel on the streets. When I see a problem, I fix it. I go ahead and get bids and stuff to take care of it. And so the next morning through the night, I did not sleep after my resignation because I had told your council, Eddie was still mayor, that I would withdraw all of those unauthorized commitments that I had made for the town of Pitkin. And I wrote him a letter and I sent a carbon copy to Sarah. And in that letter, Sarah, it says, I will complete because it is not the best regards for the citizens of Pitkin or the town of Pitkin to get rid of those contracts that you can't touch with a 10-foot pole that day. The bridge at Blue Mesa blew out the mag chloride that I already had contracted through the county. The three-quarter road base was the same thing that I'd already contracted through United Materials. And when Eddie asked me how I got those prices, I said I started working with him months before that. And he said, you'll sure not get those prices today. So I wrote that letter and I said I would keep those things intact and that I would follow the bidder that was doing the ditches. And as soon as he went past 7th Street on State, that I would put those two culverts in there, tie them together, and backfill them at no cost to the town of Pitkin. And that's exactly what I did. And Sarah, you have a copy of that. And you could have told Ramon Reed that night when he questioned it, but you didn't. So there's a communication. It's not just Jess. It's not just Eddie. It's not just Rachel. It's not just Sarah. It's not just Tom. It's the whole plan. And it really frustrates me. Let's go back a little bit.
when Ramon brought up that we ought to increase the wages shortly behind Sarah's wage being increased for the mayor and the trustees. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Ed Pianalto said, well, I think we ought to be looking at our commissioners. The volunteers are putting out just as much time or more than we are before we give ourselves a raise. Now, is that correct? It's pretty close. Anyways, long story short, when you have a $50,000-$60,000 budget and you have the opportunity of saving the town money, and you've been directed to do that in the past, and now all at once the shit hits the fan because I was doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing, I'm sorry. It's the reason I put in for the streets and ditches. I've been doing both anyways. And last spring, I had 3 different parties come to me without a ditch commissioner. Why are the ditches not on? I guess, Tom, they should have went straight to you, and you've been the one to pick up the coins, but you weren't there. So I took volunteers and I opened State Street from the head gates clear to the bottom of town. And those volunteers are the ones that came to me and asked if I would direct that. So I did. I get her done like Linda says. And then we had State Street running for several days. And Henry Kahani came to me. He says, how come you're discriminating on Main Street? I said, I'm not. He said, well, how are we going to get our water on? I said, talk to Tom Gibb. Maybe he never did, but he came back to me and he said, Jess, would you direct me and other volunteers to do that? And you can call him on the platform and see if that isn't true. And so those volunteers and I changed the gate up here at 10th Street and sent water down the creek side of Main. And we got that going that day. And then several days later, Fred Archuleta and somebody else on the mountain side of Maine. Yes, Ed Herman. Those 2 gentlemen came to me and said, why are you not getting the mountainside going? And I said, well, we got a problem down at the hotel. And there's no way of putting that through there until that's completed there on that front porch. Well, they went straight to Bob and Pam Taylor. And the next morning I get a call and they would like 5 culverts that are already paid for the town. I've already made all the business transactions with Sarah and they bought, I guess you build them, right? So that's clean as can be. And immediately that day, Phil and Todd ditched and put those culverts in front of the hotel. And the next day we put water in it with Jess's direction of splitting it there at the schoolhouse. So there's just a lot of things. You guys are throwing me under the bus for some dumbass reason, probably above and beyond my character and my performances. Now, let's back up to this 23 deal of the gazebo. The Candy Nassau Memorial Gazebo Committee and Sarah were our 2 Parks and Rec people to designate that area as a park. And that committee said that they would put the gazebo there at no cost to the town of Pitkin. And when it was complete, it would be the property of Pitkin. And through that whole process, there were nasty boulders, rocks.
Say that again. They were nasty what?
Boulders,
Boulders.
rocks that were in that area from Quartz Lane to the creek on 9th Street. And so I dug those rocks out, my equipment, and the gazebo committee paid for the 3 truckloads of soil to put in there to create a safe walking surface for the people that might be going down to the creek or enjoying the gazebo. And I turned in 15 hours to this committee for the leveling of those 3 truckloads of soil that the gazebo committee paid for. And Sarah threw a wrench in the cog right there and said, I don't think that that's true. I think the gazebo people are supposed to do it. So I talked to the gazebo people last summer. And they said, no, they did not intend to do any of the landscaping. But they did admit they had paid for those 3 loads. So that's why I tried to resubmit it. And the reason I'm tardy is I think we pay our building inspector 1 time a year. That's December last meeting. So I felt like I was in on time. Along with that bill that I asked you to submit prior to your council meeting last month of December, so it'd be in that 24 year. I also submitted the hours that I had performed from January to the time I resigned, and the time that I had spent on ditches that were flooding. And you did help me on one of them. You and your son-in-law pitched in after I got started on and got the word. So if you want to be tight as a tree on the bark, take it and run it yourself. But I think I can do a damn good job of running the streets and the ditches and taking care of you trustees and keeping you informed. But tell me if Sarah is our city manager or if she's our clerk secretary. Who do I answer to? Who do the rest of the commissioners answer to? You're putting too much trash on Sarah. Thank you. Or do you have more questions?
No, thank you very much, Jesse. As you pointed out earlier, and as I've said, communication is terribly important, and I've received more communication this evening than I have received in some time. Thank you.
Sorry, I get upset.
Go ahead, Ed.
So I'm gonna jump in here. So Jesse and I've had some pretty long conversations. Basically everything that was talked about tonight in the past. So I'm pretty versed on what happened with the culvert on 7th Street. The gravel pile, I don't know that Jesse addressed that, but I know in our conversation, when he put a bid in for gravel last year, when he was talking to, I'm not sure which company it was. They said they had 5 loads on the ground. They could give a better price if we took 5 loads rather than space it out. So he took it upon himself to save the town some money to get 5 loads and to stockpile some. So that in my opinion is just a classic example of how a commissioner is looking out for the town when and he made a judgment. He made a judgment to let's save the town some money, let's get 5 loads instead of spacing it out over the summer months and spending more money. And I think that's what we expect.
And let me jump in and clarify exactly how that happened. It was actually a 5-load deal, but I got the 6th load. And if I can remember properly, 2 loads were supposed to go on State Street below 9th, 1 load on State Street above 9th, 1 load on River Street from 1st going down past Molly's place. And 1 load, I know the 6th load was supposed to go on Sage Lane from 2nd to 3rd Street. And last summer in 23, I had shredded that and found that people were using it for a junkyard and also that the power company had a pole in the middle of it. And as the pole got moved and I started to level it down some, is when Sarah told me that she put a moratorium on me doing anything for the city until we got this wage deal figured out, how to pay me. And so that's how the 6th load went on 7th Street right off of Alpine Lane where there was a partial load there that had been using for potholes.
On Alpine Lane. Partial load on
7th
Alpine.
Street and Alpine Lane is where the 2 loads are. And one of those loads is the sixth load that's in this contract that Ed Pinolls was just telling me about. And Sarah has copies of all that stuff. When I resigned, I gave her all up. She came to my house and picked those things up, so I don't even have them anymore. Go ahead, please, Ed.
Okay, so I guess two other things I just want to add is to clarify, looking at the ordinance, the commissioner's answer to the Board of Trustees, plain and simple. So, you know, and I think it's part of the whole communication thing of not just one person not communicating to the Board of Trustees, but there were some communications that happened that didn't get passed to the rest of the board. Maybe it went to Eddie, maybe it went to Sarah. And it didn't get passed on. So the communication isn't just one-sided. We also have it on the agenda tonight on that item, the second item, confirmation from the town board of planned projects and work. That's confirmation from the board giving back communication to the commissioners that yes, this is the direction to go. So I think the communication is key for everyone. It's not just the commissioners telling us what to do. We've got to give feedback to them. And obviously, if we have information, we need to be giving it to them as well.
Thank you, Ed. Well, so, I can now say, so, Jesse and Jara told us when they would be back. And, I asked our town attorney if I could go have a conversation with Jesse ahead of this meeting, because there's some things I would like to clear up, things I would like to know. And he said, oh, you can visit with Jesse all you want, but not about streets.
Aren't you and I brothers to communicate back and forth
Well, sometimes, well,
into this mess? We go legal.
well, perhaps I should not have brought it up, but it is, I should have just disregarded that and come to see you. At any rate, so, I think that we have, to a large degree, settled on pretty much a plan. We have expectations, we have guidelines, we have, I would like to see what Pete comes up with and move on after seeing that. And this is a work session. We don't get to make any votes tonight. So that's where I'm gonna, throw out the idea that, perhaps we've covered all the ground we can cover tonight. Go ahead, Ed.
So I don't know when we can have the next work session regarding spending the draft that Pete has put together. But are you saying that you want to hold off until we have that, even if it's after the next board meeting?
Not necessarily.
And I would recommend at the next board meeting, if Jesse still wants to do the job, then we just let's take possible action.
Thank you, Pete. Are you agreeable with that?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that I objected to the last meeting was because it hadn't been posted. It has been posted.
Okay.
I mean, that's what's supposed to be done when there's a vacancy in another position.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we wanting Pete to be here for the meeting, or are you talking about Zoom?
You know, I haven't communicated directly with Pete, so I don't know.
He's online.
He's on and he was trying to talk, but
Oh, he was?
Did he have his hand up?
well, you have the blue box around him.
Oh,
But
oh, there he is.
I'll be arriving in Pitkin next Wednesday afternoon. So anytime after that, for the next couple months thereafter, I'll be available.
Are you gonna be here full-time for a bit?
Yes.
Excellent. Take a calendar look, guys, see what we can come up with.
What's that? Would that be the Wednesday, the 15th he comes back?
That's correct.
Okay,
I've got to leave on the 15th through the 22nd.
What day is the 15th?
Is it the Wednesday, I gotta leave Wednesday,
It is the Wednesday.
and I won't be back until late on the 22nd.
What's town meeting date?
20th.
And you won't be back till the 22nd.
I try to Zoom on the 20th.
Okay.
do we want to Zoom with Pete, or what do you and Pete think about that?
Please say that again.
Would we want to Zoom with Pete, or with Pete and you rather?
Oh, well, yeah, so you're asking the wrong person. I don't like Zoom. I just don't. We're getting better with our technical difficulties. And I've seen Ed also set up here and run a meeting. Everybody's on Zoom but Ed, and he did just fine. So Pete, you think we could do this on Zoom?
mean, he's gonna be here. Hey, why don't we just wait?
Well, because Ed's leaving.
Well,
Ed can do it on Zoom? Okay, let's try and work something out, pull this together.
It's not on the 17th because I won't be able to see.
Would Pete be available, or Sarah, or anything that we could put together on the 16th? Or does that not work?
if you're asking me, the evening of the 16th would be workable.
Sixteenth is workable. What time of
Yeah.
day would you like to do that?
Well, late in the afternoon, I know that my wife has me scheduled to be in town while she has a hair appointment. So, it would be late in the day. I mean, probably after 4 or 5. I mean, whatever
Oh,
works
well,
for
so
you.
like a 6:30 deal would work out?
Yes, that would be fine with me. Yes.
Can we pull that together?
16th.
Does that work? 6:30 on the day,
This is the meeting.
right?
I don't plan on this thing.
You're not gonna attend.
I'm gonna actually be out of town. I was planning on.
You were not, okay.
Well, there'll still be three of us, so has to be a work session. Okay, let's shoot for that. Okay, Mr. Herman.
Yeah, this is Ed Herman. I'd like to ask a question. I know you probably can't answer it. This is it's a work session though, right?
Right.
How much money are we talking about to pay Mr. Garrettson? You know how much that is, that bill?
The bill, so I think I do have a copy of that. $1,175.
You're kidding me.
Well,
You
isn't,
guys have done all of this over $1,000?
Please say-
yes, go ahead.
Okay, so what happened was the bill was turned in. And from my understanding of having sat in 100% of the meetings discussing the memorial gazebo and park area, was that the town was to not have any costs incurred for the development of that memorial. It was asked and repeated multiple times in multiple meetings, no cost to the town, no cost to the town, no cost to the town. So then the town received a bill. I did not refuse to pay the bill. I brought the bill to the board to confirm that it should be paid because I was unclear, not having expected a bill, not having budgeted for that bill for that year. And so this wasn't a beginning and end with the treasurer issue. If you want to listen to the audio, it's January 2023, starting at about 25 minutes. Go ahead and listen to the audio. And what I specifically said was, I brought this to the board. We can write the check if the board wants, but this was my concern about that particular bill. There was discussion with the board, and the determination was that in the spring of 2023, so we're talking 20 months ago, the bill was going to be returned to the Memorial Committee. As far as the town knows, we have no idea what happened with that bill. We have no idea what the committee decided until the bill showed up again, now 2 years after the bill was incurred. So there hasn't been a 2-year-long discussion about this bill. The board said, okay, fine, take it back to the Memorial Committee. So there were two things that were going to happen. One, it was going to go back to the Memorial Committee in the spring of 2023. The town still doesn't know if that happened. Two, Jara said, well, maybe I can get the street commissioner to donate those hours. The matter was closed with the Board of Trustees. Not a word was said until the bill showed back up approximately a month ago.
Sure it wasn't the spring of 24?
I'm 100% sure. I've got the minutes.
Last summer.
Well, I'm kind of interested. Whose money is this that we're refusing to give Mr. Garrettson his pay? Whose money is this?
So
It's ours, Sarah. This is the town's money. And I think it's really petty. Over $1,000. You're not going to give this man over some technicality over there. Let me tell you how much money and time I got in that gazebo that I donated to this town. I was out there in the hot sun, leveling that gravel out, putting rebar in, pouring cement, moving boulders around. Me and Jesse built that whole retaining wall against Quartz Creek right there. And now you guys are sitting back here and saying, oh, well, we're not going to give him $1,000 over some little technicality of words went back 2 years ago. I think we need to express some leadership here and cut the man a check. If not, I'm suggesting that all the townspeople get together and figure out, divide it out, and we'll pay him.
So one of the issues here is not even so much the amount of the bill. So if it's possible to consider, what happened was work was done. The Memorial Committee did not hire out for this work. The town did not hire anybody to do this work. And yet a bill was just presented. That is not how bills are paid. A person doesn't get to do a job that they're not hired to do and then present a bill to the town for a job that they were not hired to do. The request was to pay this out of Parks and Rec. There was no Parks and Rec budget for this bill, none. There's no Parks and Rec budget for this bill this year. The Parks and Rec budget is set. The plans for that budget are set. And again, going back to the core issue is that the town did not hire or ask or request that Mr. Garrettson do this work. So there's no premise for him to present a bill to the town for work that he was not hired to do. That's not how bills are paid.
How have you paid me in the last 6-7 years?
Please rephrase your question. What do you mean by
How have you paid me? How has the town paid me? Not you, Sarah. How has the town paid me in the last several years?
I'm not going to have a discussion about this. By
Okay,
check.
our
By check.
trustees need to know. Trustees, this is how it happens. Just like Tom Gibb turns his in the last of the year, I turn mine in at the end of the month. And sometimes it's a couple months. And I go back and I have it listed in my day planner. 2 hours here or 3 hours there, cleaning out ditches over here. And I submit there and I give Sarah copies of it. And I figure $35 an hour for that tracker and $0 for Jesse James.
You charge $50 an hour.
I started charging 35. Eddie Balch jumped me to 50 2 years ago. Well, I tell you, Sarah, you're not the city manager. And these trustees are falling down in your direction unless you're their designee for everything that the mayor and mayor can.
Okay, Justin.
I'm, Tom, we need to communicate and get things fixed.
Yes, sir, we do. need
It
to
causes a problem
communicate.
between Sarah and I.
And I have listened to us here, and you and I are definitely behind the ball on communication. So we will have to hash this out at some other point. This is a work session, and maybe we should try and distribute some of this information that you say you shared.
While I'm at the podium, am I supposed to tell the Candy Nassau Memorial Committee people that they're going to have to take care of 9th Street and the ADA parking that Sarah told me we were supposed to do? See, there's lots of things that are coming around that should not come around by this message.
Well, so you're asking me a question that I'm not well versed on, but somewhat versed on. And if you're going to build a facility for people, that includes handicapped people, and the facility would have to include.
There is no way of putting parking for an ADA people on that park area where the gazebo is.
So,
It has to go on 9th Street above Courts Lane.
well, and then there has to be some sort of pathway down that is passable, not just cobblestone. No, I've not been in contact with the Good Memorial Committee at all on this. They've been going fine, great guns. You applied for a fence permit on their behalf, and that went in, and that was nice. And
It's just little petty things that has really gotten under my skin and some other people in town. And evidently, I'm the only one willing to speak up and call a spade a spade. And I think if we're going to expect Sarah to be our city manager, you better start paying her for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, then.
We have some more,
Do what?
you want some more input?
I'm willing to take input here as long as we,
Yeah, well, I'm assuming we're getting close to wrapping this up because I'm not sure what else there is on the agenda. But I want to say one thing. I've heard a lot of things tonight that have never come before this board before. And that's what I think is the problem. A lot of it should have been brought up to this board before it was done or during it when it was done. Sometimes there's a criticism that the board is not doing things in public the way they're supposed to be. The board has to hold our meetings, for example, in public. We're conducting public business. There are things that have to happen between meetings. I understand that. But the aspect of planning or, and I'm not talking about emergencies. A lot of emergencies can come up. It happens. But when things are ongoing, and there's no communication to the board, but it's done anyhow, that's where the problem arises. And we get down to a point like we're at tonight, where finally I'm hearing some information that should have been told to the board, I think, a long time ago. And a whole bunch of cases, not just one item. And in some cases that I happen to know about, and couple of years ago, I asked repeatedly at board meetings, the plans for the park. And never once were any of the plans for the park discussed in front of a public meeting at this board, even though I asked for them, and they were not. Wait, let me finish, please. Basically, what it came down to with the entire park is at one point, Chris Nasso told the board that he had a committee that was working on it as a memorial for Candy, and the board was not expected to do or pay anything other than designate it as a park, which they did publicly. And that's the only public discussion that this board has ever had on it, even though I asked for it more than once. I asked for plans, I asked for just what was going to be done, and it wasn't given because it was considered private. The problem has been that things are going on that are the business of this town that are not discussed in public as they ought to be at the town boards. And that's why I ask questions when something happens, such as a culvert put in that I see because it's across the street from me. And never once was there ever a word said about putting a culvert across 7th Street or putting 7th Street, opening 7th Street between Alpine Lane and State Street. These are things that are the business of the town, and they should be discussed publicly at the town meetings. That's why I asked that question, Jesse, because it was never, ever discussed at a meeting. And I think that the town business needs to be discussed at the meetings.
Can I hop in and say something just quickly about the culvert? So the town did receive a letter in which Jesse said he would be willing to put in the culvert at no charge. At Eddie's direction, I then sent the Morrises an email saying that before 7th Street was developed, that needed to come before the Board of Trustees. I sent the email on May 31st. We received a letter from Jesse on May 21st or 22nd. And by the time I sent that letter, which was between board meetings, the Morrises wrote back and said the culvert was already in. So there was no opportunity after the plan or the suggestion was presented to Eddie for then the board to discuss whether it wanted to move forward with that plan. It just happened.
Communication. Now, you can ask our building inspector, Ramon, there is a building permit for that very gazebo with all the dimensions, with all the setbacks and everything. And there was no charge to the memorial committee for that permit because it went on town property. I think that committee jumped through the right hoops. Now, whether it got transferred from the building inspector to the trustees or whoever, I don't have a clue. But I think everybody tried to do it righteously, not hoodwinking anybody. It just, again, it seems like we're real fast to point fingers and find something to divide the town on. I have said many a times when I was street commissioner, I would not expect the town to spend one dime that if it weren't my paycheck or my checkbook writing the same check. So I don't know how much control our trustees need or want on everybody that volunteers to help in the town of Pitkin. I know Sarah is very diligent to get lists of people for, some kind of liability or something, even that work at the cemetery to clean up. People that work on the ditches volunteer, we give names to Sarah. I know the lengths of the streets and ditches goes to Sarah for some tax deal and stuff. I don't know all of it, but I think our town needs to pull together rather than, like I told Eddie Bulch one time, the mayor and the street commissioner need to be allies, not aggressive against each other. And so I tried to work with him and I worked with Rachel. Maybe part of my problem is working too much with the mayor and not with the trustees. I don't know. But it seems to me that the mayor has the right to call a tow truck pull a post without asking the trustees. There's a lot of responsibilities that go with a mayor title. And so therefore, there's a opportunity for problems, one way or the other. I hope this night has been productive in setting the stage for this meeting that you have with Pete Olson and the rest of the year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Anybody got us? Anybody else have anything they want to say, or can we? I think we've been somewhat productive.
I do too, and yes, it's time for me to go. But I believe that when we're talking about communication, that Linda Cole has presented written communication. Yeah, several times from the gazebo memorial committee to the board. There should be written communication several times from that committee. Yes, even with pictures. So we were in communication with the board. I happen to be on that committee too.
Okay.
Feel like it was productive. Thank you.
Okay, then. If everyone is agreeable. Okay, then. Thank you all so very much. Our meeting tonight is adjourned.